Hi, and welcome to this session. I hope so far you enjoyed the conference. And now I'm going to talk about DevOps in Flutter mobile development. If you are not a Flutter developer, don't worry about it. I think you still can take a lot of note out of this presentation, I hope. But for those of you that want to know what is this Flutter and why I chose this topic, the main reason is because generally Flutter is it's an UI toolkit that helps you to build beautiful mobile application, right? For both mobile, like for Android, iOS, desktop, web, and different platforms. And one of the very good thing about Flutter is that as soon as you start working with that, you will realize yourself that Flutter makes you build application very fast. And the fact that it also compiles to 6 platforms helps you to build like cross-platform application very fast. And that's another reason is another thing that is Flutter also is like an open source project. So all of these together makes you and your team and your company so productive as you go. If you have not played around with Flutter, so I encourage you to go to flutter.dev, the documentation, take a look at that. And if you want to really quickly figure out how Flutter works, there is a tool recently that been developed by a company named Invertase. Zap.run is the tool that helps you without installing anything. Just go to your browser and experiment with Flutter. So that's a good start. Perhaps you can, get your hands dirty with Flutter code and Dart code a bit. As your project grow, though, in Flutter and in mobile development, the more feature comes, the more bugs comes, the more you realize that you need to have a proper process to get into market, to get into your customer as fast as possible. And that's probably one of the reasons you chose Flutter already, right? And that's the fact about the DevOps mindset here. The continuous delivery and deployment helps you to, as quickly as possible, get your feature out from the development phase to the market, to your testers, to your end users. In this presentation today, I will walk you through the branching flow, which I think it will work pretty well with mobile development, especially Flutter. Deployment flow, and we talk about CDCI, how to make it agnostic or platform agnostic, and also about job automations that helps you to quickly get into the market as fast as possible. Let me introduce myself very quickly. My name is Majid. I'm based in Oslo, Norway. I am Google Developer Expert for Flutter and Dart, and also Head of DevRel at Invertase. I do a lot of community things, especially for Flutter community. I am considering myself as one of the lead in the Flutter community. But let's get into the talk. How can you get your code to your user? Let's talk about this flow. These are all of my experiment or experience from the time that I've been developing mobile, especially Flutter, in the last couple of years. One of the things that you may think about is, well, if you want to categorize your company users, they're probably going to start from the testers, like internal testers, and company testers, like maybe your team testers. Maybe you have some beta, open beta, or maybe external testers. And then at the end, it goes to the production. This is a very typical, phase of testing an application. One of the thing that may help with this flow, in terms of managing your code, is in fact Git flow. Git flow is especially if you're doing a Scrum, at one of these framework for agile development, it works pretty well over there. Like, let's get into that. The Git flow, in short, is talking about feature branches. Then you're going to have a develop branch, you're going to have a master branch, and you're going to have a release branch. So it's going to like be three different, let's say, or four different tracks or branches here. But it's actually matching those testers or group of users in your company very well. You may even have hot fixes, which you need to fix something very quickly, get into master and develop. Speaking of that, then you can map this very quickly to your users. Like you can say, well, develop may go to internal testers. The feature branch can go to your engineers, like test engineers, maybe. And the release branch can go to beta testers all the time. And then your production is always master. And the hotfix also goes all the time to both develop and master. So this is one of the flow that works pretty well. In fact, you can create a script or, bash or whatever that is also matching your deployment lane with these branches as well. You can simply say, whenever we're talking about master branch, then talking about, one production deployment lane or the other ones as well. That is also matching the Android and iOS, tracks for deploying of your application. You can simply like in an Android, you have, a couple of tracks to deploy. And in iOS, you have for sure two at least, right? So you can always like release to these tracks. You can just say, for example, my end user gets all the time from App Store or production from Android, and the beta testers from test flight and beta tracks in this case. My internal can receive it from, different branches as well. It may not like exactly match, but there are different solutions that you can match that to. For example, you can use these tools such as Firebase App Distribution or App Center from Microsoft that helps you to deploy without deploying to any of these, app stores. You can get to your testers as quickly as possible. You don't need to necessarily wait for your app to be released to any of these tracks. Deployment is faster, everything is much faster, and you have targeted users that you can deploy to. But that's about deployment. How can we make sure about code quality? The deployment is not the only thing. So we need to have, that's the flow, we need to have also a process of code quality check. This is very important. In fact, this is one of the things that you can leverage, the same language that you're writing code for Flutter, Dart, adding all of these checks into your project too. Imagine that I have written like a script in Dart. What can it do? Like simply, you can have an analyzer. So for those who don't know, Dart SDK or Flutter comes with analyzer, formatting, testing, everything that you technically need for building a mobile application or a Dart application. You have everything under your hand. You don't need to really install anything extra. But you can leverage those, commands. You can use Flutter Analyzer running some, test under the hood, with these Dart, format. That's the same language you're writing code. You don't need to know Bash or anything else. It's as simple as writing Dart code. But the good thing here is you can leverage the tools under your hand to run this Dart code. For example, Git hooks are one of those. You probably know that we have like different Git hooks, such as Git commit messages, pre-commit, and so on and so forth. In fact, you can write your Dart SDK, your Dart scripts, and then force your hooks. This is my hook, like pre-commit, to run this hook, the Dart hook that you have. So then technically, you don't need to write any other code except Dart. Just need to add this Dart, a script to your to your pre-commit hook, Git hook, as you have in your project. So this is exactly what you can do with all of the others. Like you can create, in this example, I've created like one a script for pre-commit. Every command that I needed, for example, I needed analyzer and formatting and test. Every time I'm going to commit, or maybe you can have push and peer push and so many other things. Make sure that like your commit messages are following your conventions, your formatting, analyzing, all of those things that you need to test on CDCI can also be run on the computer of the developer. So it makes your PRs even better, let's say. So another thing is about like continuous integration and continuous delivery, right? So you need to have some kind of tool. In fact, with this flow that we discuss right now, it's very common that you see we started like probably writing some code, branching out, feature branch, we're done. All of the code quality, everything is done, checks are done. Then we're going to send a PR, and someone is reviewing, the CDCI server is running some other extra script, and then we merge the master, and generally we get to to the customer. It's absolutely nice that you write or you have a process that each of these steps can be run in any different platforms, and that's the things we're going to talk about right now. So we believe, or I personally believe, we need to find out a solution that is more of seamless plus cross-platform agnostic somehow. And this is very important in order to onboard your developers. This is also part of the productivity and, the DevOps mindset. You have a lot of tools under your hand right now to make your CDCI. You have all of these amazing tools, Bitrise, CodeMagic, Jenkins, or so on and so forth. So many of them right now. But one of the things that is very nice is the process you define as a developer. It would be nice to be in a way that if you are migrating from one CDCI to another one, or if you would like to do it even in your computer for any reason, you can actually do that too. And that's the thing. That's the way that we're talking about Fastlane, a tool that makes your Android and iOS development pipelines much easier for you. Fastlane is doing a lot of things for you. It creates workflow of development. It started from building, code signing, capture screenshots, and delivering metadata, and so on and so forth. So many of these, which you don't need to do any of that yourself. The setup of Fastlane is pretty simple. As long as you have Ruby and Gem installed on your machine, you get your CDCI, you get your CLI, and then you can like simply start generating these fast files for your Android or iOS project. We're talking now particularly about Android and iOS in this case. So in fact, these fast files are pretty much Ruby files. So you can write Ruby. Ruby is not a very difficult language, perhaps, for many of you if you know other languages. And you come to these fast files. You can even merge these, Android and iOS into one and reuse many of those code blocks as well. I'll show you some examples quickly. Then I have your fast file or Fastlane project. Comes with your app information in app file, the fast file for writing your workflow, and other files, depends on what you want to do. even delivering the metadata for App Store and iOS. So let's take a look at one of the fast file. I mean, this is just an example. In the idea of the fast file is to create lanes, and each lanes can be considered as like a step or a function that is going to run. You can consider it as one step of the workflow. So you can do a lot of things in Fastfile for sure. You can even have like different variables. And as I said, this is just a Ruby file. Technically, you can write anything. Here is an example of the platform. In Fastfile, you can define which platform you're writing some of the lanes. The reason that I added the previous slide is to show you that you can have these platforms into one file or maybe even split it and create a smaller module that is similar for both of these, platforms. There are many things like, for example, generating changelog or creating metadata or things like that can be a lane out of these platforms, which you can actually reuse them inside these platforms. Here is an example. A lane can be a composition of several lanes as well. For example, here we're writing a lane of building for internal release for beta testers. So we have a lane of prepare, set up a new change like another one, and release to store. These are like, you see, these are the other lanes inside this lane they are all our common functions, perhaps, that, we can reuse them for different lanes. And we can do the same thing for iOS in this case. We're not going to deploy to track like beta track or anything like that. In this case, we're going to use prepare to show that this is like a different environment, and set up change like, again, the same thing. And this is going to go to test flight. So of course, some of these, steps are different. For example, upload to test flight for iOS only. But the prepare and setup may follow the same procedure for both platforms. Reusability is a key here. So one of the things that is very important when it comes to iOS deployment is code signing. You build your Flutter application, in this case, with no code signing, which is very good. So there are commands in Flutter CLI that you can just pass -- no code sign or whatever. Then you build without code signing. But Fastlane will help you to sign your code as easy as possible. In fact, Fastlane comes with another subtools called Match and PEM, which gives you an opportunity to, as quickly as run maybe 1-2 commands, generate your certificate, generate your profile and provisioning stuff, and just install it on your machine, your CDCI, wherever it is, and even share it across your team member. You really don't need to generate different, certificate for each person. You can store it and share it safely across team members. And that is very nice. Just with a few commands. And as soon as you're done with the initial setup and you're storing your certificates, let's say, and profile to Google, you can store it in different storage. You can store it on GitHub, Google Cloud, AWS S3, or Azure Blobs, wherever you feel comfortable with. You can definitely go and store those certificates, which helps you to share this code signing across team members. And that's the things. When it comes to code signing, here is an example of creating a code signing, lane, you can simply just call a function name sync code as signing, and you're good to go. So everything will be, signed, and you are pretty much okay. You can also call match which is an alias for sync code signing. That's not it. There are lots of other things that when it comes to deployment of a mobile, you need to take into account. For example, build number, version, and change log, human readable change logs, different language sometimes. These are the things that you don't need to think about it from now on using this project. You can always get the latest build number from any tracks that you would like, bump it with one or whatever number you like, and you move on with that. In fact, you can do the same thing with uh, Android and iOS, both of them. So it's as simple as just getting the numbers. These are the pre-built functions from Fastlane that you can use and quickly update your app versioning when you want to deploy. You can even run all of those functions that we discussed previously about code quality before building, making sure that everything is good to go before you build and deploy. Once more, maybe for double check and double confirm. Building changelog, generating changelog generally is also something that you can use in Fastlane. Simply read maybe a changelog file or write whatever you want as automatically as you like. You can read maybe Git commits or whatever you want. If you have a convention like Git commit style, it's pretty easy with Fastlane to generate those. Very simple as well. And that's not it. There are many plugins and things that you can add to Fastlane and get even more stuff. Like you can automatically tag the version to GitHub after the release. You can you can push to Git remote. You can do many other things. You can generate icons, badge, and screenshots, and whatever you need for your application. These are all possible with Fastlane. And even one thing that I wanted to say is possible is renewing the push notification certificate. And all of those certificates that you usually have, you need to do that manually. You don't need to do that anymore. You can just quickly add this script and get it to work. And once you're done with all of your lanes and functions and stuff, so you can go and create your maybe internal, prod, and beta, which is reflecting to the same branching workflow that we discuss. And in fact, then you can simply go to your CDCI, your machine, wherever you install Fastlane, and say, hey, bundle exec Fastlane, just go for iOS lane internal. And you're just, creating similar things for both platforms. And the pipeline will start. Definitely you're going to deploy to where you wanted based on your fork Git flow or the branch flow that you described for your team, for your stakeholder in the beginning that we discussed. This is great. And now this is a time that you can not only run this script on your machine, but also you can go ahead and go and run that on CodeMagic, on Bitrise, on GitHub Actions, or wherever you want, without compromising, anything that is specific to that platform. You can leverage the platform to run your script. You can share that, stuff, even with your team member, running them on their machine without setting up anything extra. Nothing extra, and that is absolutely fantastic, which makes your development process way easier. There are lots of things more that I can talk about DevOps and mobile development, especially for Flutter. However, just 25 minutes is not enough time to talk about everything. So I tried to give you the high level or the most important things that we face in any project that so far we've done. And we're trying to mitigate that with different approaches. And I think this is one of the best approaches that so far I found. And it works pretty well. So in fact, we talked about creating a Git flow or a branch flow of your application where these branches are going to go. Even if you are using not Git flow or maybe other things, you still need to figure out which kind of maybe commits should start building or triggering for production, whether it's a tag push or something else. You can define this flow for yourself. As soon as you define that, then you can go and write the lanes or the scripts that are matching those, process that you define, and then you can deploy to your customer as quickly as possible. And once you do that once, then you don't think about it anymore. You're good to go. Leave it as is and just start developing your application, and make sure always you get feedback from your client as soon as possible. Thank you very much. And if you have any question, you can come back to me later. You can find the slides on this URL, slides.com/myhandler. You can follow me also on social media. Everywhere you can find me with this handler on the screen. Thank you very much. See you soon.